President of ASEAN Electric Vehicle Association, and other distinguished speakers and business leaders and online viewers. I extend my warmest welcome to all of you attending the 6th ASEAN Korea Electric Vehicle Forum here on this beautiful island of Jeju. I would also like to express my gratitude to Global Electric Vehicle Association Network and the International Electric Vehicle Expo Committee for their contributions in organizing this important forum. Distinguished guests, the damaging effects of climate change are no secret. Our global society is aligning its agenda toward reducing greenhouse gas emission, and at the forefront of this initiative, electric vehicles lie. According to International Energy Agency, the transportation sector accounts for 16% of global gas emissions. Therefore, the increased production and adoption of electric vehicles is a key means to reducing emissions in the transportation sector. Fortunately, the world is on a good trajectory. In 2022, electric vehicles made up of 14% of world's passenger vehicle sales in comparison to 9% in 2021. Goldman Sachs reported early this year, electric vehicles will account for nearly half of new car sales by 2035. Major economies such as United States and European Union setting their ambitious targets, whereby US aims to have at least 54% of new vehicles sold to be electric by 2030, and the latter, EU, at least 30 million zero-emission cars on European roads by 2030. In line with this global initiative, Korea is also accelerating its efforts toward greener mobility. The government has vowed to have 1.13 million electric vehicles on the road and 45,000 charging stations by 2025. Major domestic automakers like Hyundai Motor Group are spearheading e-mobility in the private sector. In 2022, it was ranked as fourth largest electric vehicle producer with a global market share of 10%. Recently, President Yoon Suk-yeol visited the newly opened Kia Motors electric vehicle production facility in Hwaseong and vowed to boost Korea's electric vehicle production capacity fivefold by 2030. Meanwhile, the efforts of our ASEAN partners shall not go unnoticed. Indonesia aims to develop ASEAN electric vehicle ecosystem during its chairmanship and announced its national electric vehicle aspiration, covering production increase in raw materials, batteries, and vehicles. Indonesia is committed to producing 2.2 million electric cars by 2030. Other ASEAN countries share this agenda. Malaysia will have electric vehicles account for 15% of total sales by 2030. Today, we have many Philippines colleagues here. The Philippines hopes to have all new car sales to be electric by 2040, while Thailand will have electric cars fully dominate the road by 2035. Ladies and gentlemen, electric vehicle sector is ripe with opportunities. The global trend is calling for new investments in all areas, from battery technology, manufacturing, and expansion of charging infrastructure. In fact, the new Hyundai electric vehicle plant in Indonesia that just started operation last year have already rolled out more than 80,000 units. Hence, it is imperative we build on this momentum. Since its establishment in 2009, our center The ASEAN Korea Center has continuously sought to strengthen the economic and social cultural cooperation between ASEAN and Korea. In this vein, we are striving to promote trade in innovative sectors such as electric vehicle industry. The road toward electric mobility still presents its challenges. Restricted trade policies, entry barriers to battery technology, and lack of electric vehicle charging infrastructure, to name a few. Yet, the combined strengths of ASEAN and Korea and the concerted efforts between public and private sectors will pave the road for a cleaner, safer, and prosperous further future for both regions. Finally, I thank you once again for attending our forum. I hope today's discourse on the policies, business opportunities will accelerate ASEAN and Korea's collaboration toward e-mobility. I look forward to an afternoon of valuable insights and enlightenment. I thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Secretary General. I would now like to invite Dr. Lee Seung-hoon, advisor to the organizing committee of the IEBE, for his welcome remarks. Please welcome him with a big hand.
As Mr. Kim enumerated all the names of distinguished guests and very meaningful points of electricity vehicle industries, I am planning to deliver just simple welcoming address. On behalf of Organization Committee, I extend my warmest welcome to all the participants, local and abroad, to this wonderful forum. In particular, I cannot afford to miss to congratulate Chairman Edmund Araga for the keynote speaker of today's session on his receiving honorable award yesterday afternoon. I was there, and it was a really fantastic moment. Congratulations again. Third world today is still struggling to catch up the advanced industrial powers. And the task is by no means easy, as the gap is too wide. Maybe hundreds of years. E-mobility, however, is a different area. It's a completely new business. The so-called, the first front runner, Tesla, is ahead of us only by 20 years or so. So we can easily catch up if we follow the right track. If we get together like today, very often, and exchange our opinions and improve our collaborations, then it will be far easier for us to catch up the Tesla and the other front runners, and third world will be developing its e-mobility industries shoulder to shoulder to the advanced countries. So there is really a chance for us. Jeju is not only a lovely island, but also a good place for such takeoff through collaborations, meetings and discussions and exchanging opinions. So I indeed welcome all of you again to this wonderful forum. Hope all of you get something out of this first meeting so that you can facilitate the development of e-mobility in your country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lee Seung-hoon. Last but not least, let us greet Her Excellency Maria Teresa Dizon de Vega, Ambassador of the Republic of Philippines to Korea, for her congratulatory remarks. Please welcome Her Excellency with a warm round of applause.
His Excellency Kim Hae-young, the Secretary General of the ASEAN Korea Center, Dr. Lee Sung-hoon, the advisor to the Organizing Committee of the IEVE, our very recent awardee and president of the ASEAN Federation of EV Associations, Mr. Edmund Araga, distinguished speakers and experts, ladies and gentlemen, mabuhay, anyong hashimnika, good day to everyone joining us for this very important session. A year ago, I was privileged to deliver brief remarks at last year's EV Forum, and I am honored to do so again during this milestone 10th year for the International E-Vehicle Expo, which continues to grow under the leadership of Chairman Kim Dae-wan. I am likewise very pleased to convey my congratulations on the dynamic partnership between the ASEAN Korea Center and IEVE in co-organizing for the first time this special forum focused on developments in the EV sector in ASEAN. The partnership is truly a testament to the forward-looking and sustainability focus of the AKC under the leadership of Ambassador Kim and also the IEVE. And both of these organizations continue to raise the profile of the EV industry. I am likewise looking forward to hearing the presentations, inputs, and views of the EV industry policymakers, implementers, and innovators from both the government and business sectors this afternoon. In December 2021, the results of a survey of 8 ASEAN EV markets on the potential for the growth of the EV industries in the region was released. The survey was conducted in August of the same year with the support of the ASEAN Center of Energy and the University Technology Malaysia, and the survey was conducted with respondents from the government, the private sector, and the academe in Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. Some interesting points were revealed in the survey responses, such as on the positive side, it was clear across the board that the ASEAN region is receptive to transitioning towards e-vehicles. However, the exercise likewise showed that a great amount of work needs to be undertaken to address awareness and consumer attitudes towards EVs, the need for more education and incentives to push the EV uptake even further, the implementing strategies and policies to manage EV transition, and the deployment of the necessary infrastructure to truly make the EV industry viable and sustainable. Furthermore, as the EV technology is very rapidly accelerating, ASEAN countries, including the Philippines, will need to play catch-up with the more mature EV industries in key countries in Europe, the United States, China, Japan, and of course, our host Korea. I am sure a more comprehensive view of the EV industry in the region will be provided by our keynote speaker, Mr. Araga. And on the part of the Philippines, we are very fortunate to have on one of the panels today, Executive Director Corazon Halili Dichosa of the Board of Investments of the Philippines and Director Patrick Aquino of the Department of Energy to talk about the prospects for the EV industry in our country. The Philippines is now in the midst of rolling out the implementation of the Electric Vehicle Industry Development Act, or the EVIDA law, as well as the governance, incentives, capacity building, and resource elements, including the critical green material supply needed for the EV industry and its ecosystem. These components are among the features of the Philippines' comprehensive roadmap for the e-vehicle industry, which our experts will be discussing later. Ladies and gentlemen, the road ahead for the EV sector is, as mentioned by Ambassador Kim, fraught with challenges for the ASEAN region, but also replete with opportunities for policies and incentives benchmarking, for supply chain and manufacturing technology cooperation, and consumer education and engagement, particularly with Korea, one of ASEAN's closest partners in green growth and technology, and with whom countries in our region, both bilaterally and multilaterally, share a common commitment to a more sustainable and resilient resilient future. Once again, I convey my congratulations and thanks to the ASEAN Korea Center and to the ever-growing IEVE family. Maraming salamat. Thank you. Kamsahamnida.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your remarks. Before we proceed, let me remind our online viewers to use the YouTube live chat to pose any questions or comments regarding the forum. Your virtual presence is much appreciated. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Edmund Araga, President of the ASEAN Federation of EV Associations, for his keynote presentation. Please welcome Mr. Araga with a round of applause.
Good afternoon. Indulgence for my voice because I lost it somewhere else. Yesterday was really a very exciting and surprising award that we had as an association. Again, good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of ASEAN Federation of Electric Vehicle Association, it is my honor and pleasure to be the keynote speaker for this event. His Excellency Lee Min-ho, Ambassador Lee Min-ho, Her Excellency Ambassador Teresa de Vega. Good afternoons. We are very happy that we present before you as to our setup in ASEAN. We would like to start up on introducing our association. As Asian Federation of Electric Vehicle Associations is considered ASEAN, but we cannot make use of ASEAN word for the meantime, temporarily, because we have to make an approval from the organizing committee of ASEAN organization. So temporarily, we would make use of Asian Federation of Electric Vehicle Associations. And this comprises of Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and recently Periklindo from Indonesia. It started way back 2017 through the efforts and partnership and collaboration with our very own Madam Cory Dichosa from Board of Investments under DTI, Department of Trade and Industry, wherein they spearheaded and set up this event way back 2017 during the host meeting of Philippines 2017, September. Our mission is to promote electric vehicle adaptation and catalyze the development and harmonization of standards within the region. We envision to be an integral part in making the industry viable in the region through the sharing, promotion, and facilitation of best practices, research and development, and continuous improvements in industry networking. With this, there is a big factor that Gayan was able to help us out. As you could see there on the screen, Chairman Kim is there, joining us, witnessing the 2017 ASEAN, the first ASEAN Electric and Hybrid Vehicle Summit. In that, what are our key elements? Cooperation on the promotion of harmonized electric vehicle standards and technologies, networking within the region, within member associations, promoting joint ventures, collaboration of business entities, sharing of best practices, and other relevant information regarding the industry. We also would like to highlight our future. The future is on the students. We have been able to come up with the academic chapters from different member countries to work together with the private sector and the government. So in this, we were able to establish last year our ASEAN, uh, first ASEAN Federation Electric Vehicle Summit Policy Dialogue, which took place in the Philippines on last October 20 and 21 at the SMX Convention Center, wherein it is being participated by our members together with ASEAN Center for Energy, uh, represented from one of the executives of ASEAN ACE. Together, we were able to establish camaraderie and bilateral talks and discussing the standards and its policies. Now, as we come to the vehicle facts and trends, this is the graph that we gathered from each and every member countries. Car ownership ratio in the ASEAN has a wide disparity. Personal cars are the most affected during the pandemic season, and commercial vehicles and motorcycle sales are expected to rebound faster due to the increasing e-commerce. Motorcycles are expected to grow faster due to the need for personal mobility beyond the pandemic due to virus phobia. In terms of statistics, these are the comparison data from Thailand, Philippines, Singapore, and Malaysia, wherein we gathered as of 2021 data from Thailand, from Philippines, and from Singapore as of 2019, and Malaysia. And these are the graph that we included, wherein the number of vehicles that is being registered under the member countries. In terms of adoption targets, we were able to highlight the targets being provided for by each member countries from Thailand, Philippines, and Singapore. As to ASEAN EV infrastructure and targets, we were able to gather from Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines as to its major push within the next 10 years. In terms of consumer views, as being mentioned by Ambassador Teresa de Vega, the reception of the consumers from each member countries are widely accepted, and that in this kind of way that we are having, we really see the potential of the EV industry in the region. In terms of incentives, we gather all the incentives being provided for by Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia, wherein most are from the Thailand in terms of incentives as to corporate tax, and as to compare to Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. I think the screen is too big for you to read, so I don't want to read it over again because it would be dull. You might sleep while I was presenting. So indulgence for that, so I can, you would see clearly on this in terms of industry incentives on import duty and other tax exemptions, comparison between Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, and Vietnam. And only in Thailand that has subsidies in terms of research and development grants, human resource development grants, and the investment support. This one can be attested by our representative from Thailand, the Vice President, Mr. Morog. And in Philippines, research and development grants are being provided for as well. In terms of purchase incentives, purchase subsidies were provided for in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore. In Philippines and Vietnam, we don't have yet. In terms of tax incentives, most have incentives on tax, except we didn't get details exactly from Singapore. Now, in terms of type approval regulations, most are on the adoption of UNR, or United Nations regulations, in that it builds when we establish the industry, we have to come up and secure the standards, regulations, and policies, in that adoptions are being brought up by Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Philippines under United Nations regulations. If you would just notice there that in Philippines, there is adoption but no local enabling regulation yet, as we are still working in progress on those under the Bureau of Philippine Standards Technical Committee 89. So we are still in the works, and more work has to be done. In terms of policy direction, mostly focus on manufacturing incentives, and consumer side incentives are mostly limited to purchase tax exemption or reduction in increasing realization for subsidies. In terms of increasing willingness to support public transportation, in EV adoption is a must. And then there is a strong efforts toward adoption and implementation of EV homologation regulations is needed within the region. Through that ends my presentation. And I hope I was able to deliver whatever expectations you might be on our 5 member countries. Next year, expects additional members from Laos and Vietnam officially, hoping that we could complete the 10 member countries of ASEAN region, and hoping that we could be accredited by ASEAN organization officially by next year. Again, on behalf of ASEAN Federation of Electric Vehicle Association, and as the President of Electric Vehicle Association of the Philippines, we would like to thank Global Electric Vehicle Association Network for bringing us together in this wonderful event, bringing us closer, collaboration, working together in camaraderie, and most especially, we are all united as one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Araga, for the insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the break, I kindly ask you to fill out the survey placed before you. Our online viewers may also find the survey in the YouTube description box. We will have a short break. See you again at 2:45. Also, drinks are prepared for the break, so please feel free to help yourself from the table on your left. to return to their seats. 네네네. 앉아 계시면 좀 이따 호명해 드릴게요. Welcome back. We will now Welcome back. We will now proceed to session 1, EV policies of ASEAN and Korea. The session will consist of 10 minutes presentations by 5 speakers and a discussion round led by Mr. Joshua Nui, head of the Trade and Investment Unit of the ASEAN Korea Center. I now invite Mr. Lee Min-ha, Secretary General of the Korea EV Association, for his presentation. Mr. Lee, the floor is yours.
안녕하십니까. Good afternoon. As introduced, I am Lee Min-ha, Secretary General of Korea Electric Vehicle Association. In this ASEAN Korea EV Forum first session, I'd like to thank everyone for inviting me. And I'd like to talk about our works in terms of EV. And I'll tell you about the strength and weakness. First, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the members of AKG and IV and participants of 10 countries of ASEAN. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to introduce the KEVA. It's a Korean representative EV association which has more than 80 companies, including completed units, batteries, charging infrastructure, and EV parts. We are joined by many related members, and I am very happy to share Korea's infrastructure distribution, and I'm very happy to share our association's past. And our past experience will be very helpful to ASEAN countries. We have 4 sectors. First, producer, including Hyundai Motors and other manufacturers. Second, battery producers, including LG and Samsung SDI. These are large companies. Third, the most important thing, charging infrastructure. In this section, many companies are members of our association, and some of them already entered into ASEAN countries. Due to COVID-19, people were afraid of seeing people in person, but in 3 years, this forum is held. So I appreciate everyone for coming. So I introduced my organization briefly, and I'm going to talk about the Korean EV policies and infrastructure policies and major countries' EV dissemination status, and I'll tell you of ASEAN countries' e-mobility industry status. Its EV dissemination status. In terms of Korea, it has introduced a lot of roadmaps. From 2010 to 2022, there has been a lot of policies. But against the policy, the dissemination could not catch up with that. We had some mistakes, but there are many separated policies. This made it difficult for dissemination. And there were battery performance issues and charging infrastructures, establishment issues. This made it difficult for dissemination. However, Korea first introduced EVs in Jeju Island, and now accumulated 400,000 cars, EVs, are in Korea. It's been 10 years. But it's activated since the platform was developed. That was about 2016 to 2017. Since then, the dissemination skyrocketed. As I heard from the presentation before, 2025 goal is more than 1.14 million EVs. From the perspective of today, I think we will be able to make it. So Korea is aiming to increase the number of hydrogen cars, and the status is as you can see. The most important for EV dissemination is, as you can see, we have 10% of EVs, but the most important thing is 4 sectors. First, purchase promotion. Second, ease of execution. Third, cost-effective administration fee. And fourth, consistency with other policies.
실질적으로 그 전기차 보급하는 데 있어서 가장 중요한 부분은
But
시적으로 대형 기관의 어떤
on top of that,
대한 정책이 실질적으로 많은
ban on ICE cars are important.
다음에 이제 그 충전 인프라의 설치 지원
And also, charging infrastructure support is needed.
부작용에 있어서 다소 낮은 수준으로
And it has small side effects, as you can see on the chart.
다음은 이제 전기차 보급 정책 현황의
Next,
정도의
EV policies.
정책 추진 시 고려 사항으로는
There are some considerations which cuts into four sectors.
기술성, 경제성
First,
네 가지 항목으로 구분할 수가 있는데요.
eco-friendliness and technical feasibility and energy security and economic viability.
것들에 대한 어떤 비교 분석뿐만 아니라 연관성에 대한 어떤 종합적인 어떤 판단이
And when it comes to roadmap and policies development, each of them must be analyzed and comprehensively studied. Let's move to EV dissemination policies in major countries.
아까 회장께서
As I heard before the presentation,
대해서 말씀을 해주셨는데 여기 같은 경우는 이제 선진 주요 국가의
these are subsidy status of advanced countries.
현황입니다. 아무래도 그 초기에 그 전기차 보급을 하기 위해서
For dissemination, in the early stage, subsidies are must.
하기에는 되게 어려운
Otherwise, we cannot
그동안의
popularize EVs.
어떤 사례를 보게 되면은
You can see the examples of major countries.
실제로 많은 부분
They promoted subsidies to disseminate EVs in their countries.
확장성을 촉진을 했고요. 그동안에 이제 영국이나 독일 같은 경우도
For example, the UK and Germany
2021년도에
in 2021 stopped subsidies,
전기차가
and then
부진해진
it turned out to be
그래서 영국과 독일 같은
the decrease of dissemination of EVs, so they restarted providing subsidies.
주고 있는 상황입니다.
So they are now providing subsidies.
다음은 그 구매 보조금에 대한 부분에 대해서 말씀드리겠습니다.
So it's about subsidy on this chart.
실질적으로 그 구매 보조금 제도는 전기차 구매에서 관심이 최고 많은 품목이고요.
Actually, the most interesting part of EV is subsidies,
구매 보조금을 많이 지급을 하고 있는데
and Korea is providing hybrid vehicle subsidies.
차에서도 보조금을 지급했지만
In the beginning, it provided subsidies to hybrid vehicles. However, it stopped it, so now only EVs can get subsidies.
나타나듯이 녹색은 판매 비중을 표시하고 있고요.
The green says
보라색
sales, and the purple says supply. Yellow is the roadmap to dissemination of EV, including the ban of internal combustive engine cars.
볼륨버그 그 NEF 그 발표 자료에 의하면
This chart shows EV market share status.
시장 점유율을 나타내는 그래프고요.
As of 2023,
까지 중국은
China is 23%.
신차 비중을 전기차로 하겠다는 부분이 있었고 유럽은
Europe is 9% out of the whole new cars, and Korea is 5%.
작년에 한국은 전기차 비중
However,
신차 판매 중에
Korea was 7%
전기차가 판매
in 2022.
다음은 그
Next, let's move on to the EV charging infrastructure status.
사실 전기차 판매에 있어서 가장 중요한 부분이 우리나라
One thing is also important. There's a saying in Korean, which is first? Because both are important. So they ask, infra is more important, or infrastructure is more important, or EV is more important. But I think the most important thing is we should not ignore both of them. We must go together with that.
정부가 초기에 주도하에 이루어져야
Actually, the government has to lead the dissemination of EVs first, as well as infrastructure,
투자를 통해서 수익을
because
기반이 되게 어렵습니다.
it's very difficult to attract investment without the support of the government.
충전 인프라
So the government has to promote the public charging stations, and then it will be followed by private actors, private players.
사실 이게 아울러 2020 보고서에서 나왔던 부분인데요.
This is EV Global Outlook 2020.
개인 충전기도 있고
There are many chargers such as slow chargers and fast chargers and personal chargers and ultra high chargers and super fast chargers,
많이 도입되고 있습니다.
etc.
초기에 전기차 모델들의 어떤 배터리 용량은
The capacity of battery in the early stage was very small. However, recently, today's battery's capacity is about more than 7 kilometers. So the charging time can be longer. So the capacity of chargers is also increasing to make it faster. In last month, I visited Taiwanese e-mobility, and there was 460 kilowatt batteries were being used. So in rest area of highways, we can also see 350 kilometers watt charging stations. It's still in dissemination. According to the report, China has the highest position, and Korea is 1.1%. But in practice, there are some differences with the chart. Korea's charging infrastructure today is among the highest. And this year, the government is planning to increase public infrastructure through about 155 billion Korean won. As I heard from Secretary General, by 2030, we can have more than 500,000 charging infrastructure through the roadmap of our policies. And by last year, 2022, there were more than 20,000 fast chargers, and in total, it was about 200,000 total charging infrastructures. It's IEA report. This data shows that Korea has about 7,200 fast chargers and 14,800 slow chargers. And the number slightly increased from that of 2019. And the ratio of fast chargers are 33.6 per unit. And the whole chargers are about 9.8 per unit. That means we are short of charging infrastructures. However, when you are put together with fast chargers and slow chargers, that means the whole charger status is 9.8 per unit, so which is a little bit smaller. And this chart is about the EV charging infrastructure development plan. The government and charger operators, service providers, manufacturers, and other stakeholders are planning to develop. The whole stakeholders' roles are very important. And major country's infrastructure policies, but because of the time constraint, I will skip this. The US, China, and Japan's infrastructure's policy status. And this is Japan's status. So I'll just briefly talk about this. And now it's Korea's infrastructure policies. Actually, we started disseminations through subsidies since 2011. And through many policies, we established charging infrastructures. We've been doing that. However, rest areas and public areas infrastructure were set since 2014. And we also have been doing that. However, we are not catching up with the dissemination of EVs according to the customers' opinions. Korea, 70% of population is living in apartment complex. So underneath the ground, they set up the charging stations. In those areas, it's very difficult to set up fast chargers. And there are many means of charging, such as smart charging and condenser charging. So to catch up with this, to keep up with this, the government is providing subsidies for chargers as well. And Korean people's personal chargers infrastructure cannot gain subsidies. In the beginning, the government provided, but in terms of personal chargers, they don't have it anymore. But I think in many ASEAN countries, the environment and circumstances are all different, such as Thailand, the Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, and other countries. I've been there, but all the circumstances are different. So they should have their own policies to meet their needs. The dissemination of charging infrastructure is as important as EV dissemination. So, our policies will be very helpful for you to reflect on your own circumstances. Korea has charging stations in rest areas, in highways, and metropolitan areas, and southeast area. That's the majority. And actually, the most amount is parking areas and parking stations and rest area on highways. That's the most area where charging stations are established. In 2016, we analyzed the charging amount per unit. In 2016, the capacity was low. So it was about 10.52 kilometers. However, over 2019, it's increased to 16.93. The reason why is that as the battery capacity increases, so the charging capacity also increased. Next, Korea's 17 cities status. And Jeju Island is the greatest. That's far on the left. In terms of Korea, when we started dissemination of EV,
고급 물량의 50%를 차지했습니다.
Jeju took the 0.5% of the whole.
하나의 제주도가
So just one island
테스트 베드로
became a test bed for EVs.
많은 분들이 와서
And many people came to Jeju Island and tried and tested EVs.
시에 있는 우리나라 사람들도
And mainland people
전기차를 경험을
had to come to Jeju Island to try EVs in the past.
전기차 바람이 지금
However, the boom of Jeju Island's EV expanded to mainland. So now the mainland has
경기 서울이나
more infrastructures in metropolitan area of mainland.
볼 수 있습니다. 다음은 또 이제 한국의 그 EV
Next.
스테이션에 대한 어떤
Our Korea EV charging station infrastructure operation status. Mostly, rest area takes the highest.
그다음에 이제 그 공공 퍼블릭
Next is public area and parking areas,
그다음에 이제 관광 명소
and which is followed by tourist attractions.
다음은 그 실질적으로 그
Let's move to
글로벌 아웃룩에 나타난 자료인데요.
IEA Global EV Outlook.
그 전기차 보급 대수 비례 급속 충전기 한 기당
It's the ratio
비율이 높은
between the number of EVs and charging stations.
선진 국가들이 차지하고 있고요.
Major countries are taking the highest place.
세계
In terms of Korea, Korea is also one of the highest, following those major countries.
그 수요를 이제
And it's the situation per year.
주요 스테이션하고 주요 스테이션
It's the comparison between ICE stations and electric vehicle charging station. But because of time constraint, I'll skip this chart explanation. And this is about
우측 상단의 그림에 보이는 그 도시 규모에 따른 적정 수준의
the explanation of the situation per region.
200 이하의 어떤 그 200 이하의 어떤 그래프 선이 이치에
Please pay attention to under 200. Can you see the red box?
전기차 시장 단계에서 전기차 충전기 보급
Charging stations disseminations can be checked in this red box.
감소되는 경향을 보여주는 거는 하단의 그 녹색 추세선의
And on the left, and you can see the fact that when you have more dependency on the infrastructure, you need to establish more charging stations.
다음은 이제 수조는 이제 앞으로 향후에
And this is the future outlook for charging station infrastructure, how it will be changed.
이 부분은 지금 제주
This picture shows Jeju more about parking station. It has solar panels and together with electric cars, charging stations. And this photo shows 300 kilometers watts fast charging station situation. It has hydrogen charging stations, and other petroleum stations. So the ecosystem is becoming a mega station.
To the time constraint, please quickly finish your presentation.
일단
Because of time constraint, I'll just tell you that in the future, all the infrastructure will be put together, not just about fuel charging station. And I also have prepared micro EV mobility as well, but unfortunately, I hope I will be able to tell you about this detail in Q&A sessions. And our association signed MOU with Thailand Association to share ideas. But in the future, I hope our associations we'll be able to expand our cooperation with other countries' associations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your presentation. Next, let me call upon Mr. Bok Deok-kyu, ASEAN Specialist from the KOTRA.
네, 반갑습니다.
Very good to see you. As introduced, I'm Bok Deok-kyu from KOTRA. So, I am from ASEAN. I just arrived to Korea from ASEAN, more than anyone here. And since 2006, I've been working in ASEAN areas for about 16 years. So I was deployed on field, and I had a chance to look at the development of e-mobility and EVs. I have witnessed the recent things that happened. So in Indonesia, Hyundai Motors is selling Ioniq 5 and manufacturing Ioniq 5 there. So this is again what I witnessed. So today I will talk about e-mobility cooperation between ASEAN and Korea. So I'm sure you're well aware about KOTRA. We handle Korea's trade and investment, and we look at how the trade is going on. And I will briefly touch upon the EV industry, and I will also briefly talk about the environmental change that is towards the EVs. So this is Korea and Korea's exports. This is the HS code of EVs, 870380. So if you look at this code, there are major export ranking countries. USA, England, and Europe, North America are our major export destinations. And Southeast Asian countries does not make it to the top 10, which means that the EV collaboration between ASEAN countries and Korea are just starting. So more in numbers, if you look at the numbers, you can see USA, UK, Germany, Canada, and Sweden. So these are our top 5 EV exports of Korea. In the Southeast Asia, if you look at the blue chart, actually the size of the square is actually our export. You can see USA, UK, and EU. In the Southeast Asian countries, Indonesia is the biggest, and also you can see Malaysia there. The speed of development of Malaysia, if you look at the speed of development, it is about 8,000%. So that came out from nowhere. So, but still, when we go back to the numbers, we're not in the collaboration state yet. We are just starting our collaboration. So today, this forum, I believe, addresses the value chain and how can we use it as a growth driver. So again, country by country, we have export rankings. 2 countries are in our top 10, one Thailand, and these are our numbers with Thailand. So this is as of today, so that you can compare this to other countries. Sorry, it was Indonesia, and Thailand is 22nd, and Indonesia is 22nd. If you add the imports and export together, then Thailand comes first. This is the global EV market, and global EV market status here. The size of the circle is the size of the market. And the position of the circle, the higher it goes, the more countries the country actually collaborates. So EU has a lot of collaboration, and again, it shows the potential of EV market. Unfortunately, you cannot see any Southeast Asian countries here, but I believe in venues such as this EV forum, I believe more and more Southeast Asian countries will be up on the chart. So this is the current ASEAN EV industry. Let me talk about the challenges. This is from our Hanoi office. These are the reasons why there are challenges in the e-mobility or EV markets. The first thing here is there are exceptions as Singapore, but all in all, the overall GDP is around $5,000. So in reality, the purchasing power of e-mobility or EVs are not that high in Southeast Asian markets. Again, Secretary General Lee has addressed the infrastructure issue. Charging station is directly related to EV demand. So because we don't have any charging station, they don't buy EVs, and since they don't buy EVs, there's not more EV charging stations. Next one is the range of EVs. So with one charging, currently some high-end cars go over 500 kilometers, but most of the EVs in one charge goes from 200 to 400 kilometers. So if you cannot handle one day, then the lack of charging stations are very severe. Next is the subsidy. Most of the countries does not have room for EV subsidies. For the last 3 or 4 years, we had COVID pandemic, and we didn't have any room for this type of subsidies, so the growth is stagnant. In Southeast Asian countries, the lack of electric power itself is a challenge. So if you ask whether we can convert all these vehicles to EV, then you can supply enough electric power. That's another story. And another thing is that the industry in itself is made big by Japan and other countries and not countries from Southeast Asia. And since Japan is not following the EV route, they are going hybrid. So again, the gap is quite high. And since Japan is focusing more on hybrid, the EV technology and EV budget is not going into the Southeast Asian countries. So again, all these are challenges for Southeast Asia. But still, we are doing this EV forum because the need of EV and e-mobility is needed because of our new environment. It's not about oil prices or simply gas prices, because globally we are facing carbon emission and our renewable energy issues as well. So in transportation also, the transition to EVs are quite accelerated, and there's a global agreement. And there's been some Kyoto protocols, and then in Kyoto Protocol we bought and sell carbon credits, but after Paris Agreement, for this transition, each countries have to agree on this carbon credit transfer. So now the situation is more severe. So for example, South Korea, Thailand, or other countries, they need to adopt EVs and reduce their carbon emission. So again, this is what I mentioned, the decrease of carbon emission. EVs might serve as a pushing power for reducing carbon emission. In Korea, the legislation has been already done, and in other countries, there's a policy documentation in Laos and Singapore, and there's been some declaration in Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam. So excluding Brunei and Philippines, all the ASEAN countries are doing some kind of movement, and we hope that Brunei and Philippines will join shortly after. Then we can say this transition towards EV will be closely related to carbon emission also. If we look at what has happened in EU, the carbon neutrality initiatives are a big thing, and transport is the biggest in carbon reduction, and the core of that is e-mobility. Of course, in this exposition, you can see electric ships or other machineries as well. But currently, for example, in Indonesia, the sales of motorcycle is 6 million per year. So in all ASEAN countries, the number of motorcycles are a lot. And if we can transition all these two-wheelers to EVs, then we can reduce a lot of carbon emission. Just like EU, ASEAN, and Korea need that transition in ground transportation. So this is the current status in Indonesia. I already mentioned, and actually, we heard from the president of Indonesian subsidies, but we are seeing new subsidies in Indonesia. So it's not unlimited. Of course, there is some constraint. So during the COVID-19 era, we could not give any subsidies, but during the post-COVID era, Indonesia started a subsidy up to 200,000 vehicles for motorcycles, and for EVs, 35,900 cars will get subsidy. The size is about 7 million won. Compared to Korea, the number is still quite low, but still, they are very desperate so that they started the subsidy. So again, I believe the acceleration towards e-mobility is there. In Thailand, Hyundai Motors actually went to this country, and they also are doing domesticalization of the manufacturing. Up to 80% will be forced to be manufactured in Thailand. So again, they have to do locally here, also in Indonesia. So TKDN is happening in Indonesia, and in Thailand, they have sold 3.5 million units total. It's not per year. So Vietnam is quite new. VinFast has started their vehicle business, and they soon started the EV business. Last year, they even exported some of their vehicles to US. So it's not all out manufacturing or export, but still we can see some transition already happening in ASEAN countries, for example, in Vietnam. So I mentioned some collaboration, and if I may, to do some suggestions, since I was in ASEAN countries, and there are a lot of rich people in Indonesia also. There are a lot of Mercedes or BMWs, but their demand is quite limited because we don't have much infrastructure in these countries. And these are some personal demands, and it's very limited to cope up with just these personal demands. The public sector needs to do purchases, and for that, the government in the G20 in Bali, they mentioned that they will make a certain amount of purchase in public sector. So the government is leading the public sector purchase as well. Again, this public sector purchase will lead to more e-mobility companies to go into the domestic market. So other than Indonesia, other ASEAN countries have to follow that. So in Korea, we talk about EV selling, but more than just EV, we need e-mobility tailored to ASEAN countries, for example, two-wheelers and three-wheelers, more cheaper products. And with these products, we would be able to do collaboration in the general e-mobility factor. Again, more than four-wheelers, two- and three-wheelers will be tailored. And charging infra also. KEPCO is here. And to say that KEPCO has led all the charging infras of Korea, and the Southeast Asian countries might get that as a role model so that they can lead the infrastructure. And if the governments can cede the good parts to other foreign companies, then they can go into that market first, and then the local companies can follow. The basic thing is, I believe, to form a value chain. In the ICE vehicle, actually Japan made manufacturing bases in other Asian countries, ASEAN countries as well. But Japan is moving towards hybrid, and the Southeast Asian countries want to go EV. So this is where they need Korean manufacturers. And to promote that, we have to know more of each other. ASEAN countries have to know more about Korean part manufacturers, vice versa. It's just like marriage needs knowing of each other. Again, let me show an example to you, my example in Indonesia after this. And again, EV cooperation needs more than that. It have to be connected with carbon reduction or renewable energy. So that needs G2G cooperation as well. That will lead to a larger cooperation. In that sense, Korea's tool of ODA and ADCF or some budget supports can continue in a larger framework. There needs to be policies, there need to be standards, so that we can have a global value chain of parts parts manufacturers and equipment manufacturers as well. So this is an example of KOTRA, and this is a Korean value chain of parts manufacturers. We have all the lists for specific parts. If you look at this, you can have all the manufacturers of Korean parts. ASEAN have to be ready with data like this. Then you would know that which country needs which industry, then we can help you with that. And we can form a global value chain in a real sense. So this is what I did in Indonesia when I first went to Indonesia. Actually, this book was published. This is a value chain map of Indonesian vehicle industry, all the directories, all the markets. This was a report. But unfortunately, COVID-19 broke out just after that. But hopefully, in Indonesia or in Southeast Asian countries or in ASEAN, we can do this together. And we can know which parts we can collaborate, and we can know which company can go into the local market. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bok, for your presentation. We kindly ask to keep your presentation time up to 10 minutes due to the time constraint. Thank you for your consideration. And next, let me invite Director Patrick Aquino from the Philippine Department of Energy.
Good day. I am Patrick Aquino, the Director of the Energy Utilization Management Bureau from the Philippine Department of Energy. I would like to thank the organizers of the 6th ASEAN Korea Electric Vehicle Forum for the opportunity of allowing us to present the Philippines' comprehensive roadmap for the electric vehicle industry, or CREVI. CREVI will serve as the national development plan for the EV industry, with an annual work plan to accelerate the development, commercialization, and utilization of EVs in the Philippines. CREVI is a living document, and as such, it will be regularly updated. Inputs on the following will be made in subsequent updates of the CREVI. This would include targets for public transport under our Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program, or PUVMP, the EV Incentive Strategy, or EVIS, and the identified public and private buildings for the EV charging stations mandate. In 2021, based on recorded data from our Transportation Department, the number of registered EVs was recorded at just around 9,000 units, or of the nearly 13 million registered road transport motor vehicles in the Philippines. Starting from 2014 to 2022, we can see the development in the adoption of EVs in the country. Currently, there are 8 models of electric tricycles available in the local market, with 6 locally made and 2 are imported. As of the end of January 2023, there were 15 electric cars, sedans, SUVs, and UVs available, with the breakdown as follows: 7 BEVs, 8 PHEVs, and an HEV. Nationwide in the Philippines, motorcycles remain to be the primary choice of vehicle across our regions, followed by cars and sedans, as well as SUVs. The numbers you're seeing includes the units deployed under the market transformation through the introduction of energy-efficient vehicles, or e-trike project, which ended in 2019. On the other hand, several private initiatives have also started to mass deploy EVs and began their refleeting. As for sales performance, the number of EVs sold surged to more than threefold in 2022, with 3,091 units sold, in contrast to 843 in 2021, 378 units in 2020, and 214 units in 2019. The DOE, the Department of Energy, monitors EV charging stations through the EV policy guidelines with the assistance from our colleagues from the Electric Vehicle Association of the Philippines, EVAP. To date, there are 32 charging stations registered from 338 EV charging stations monitored nationwide. These EV charging stations are around 258 AC chargers, 59 DC chargers, and 21 battery swapping stations. Note that this is not an exhaustive list, as the mandate for accreditation started with EVIDA. The private sector has also initiated partnership to integrate emerging technologies for EV charging stations in the country. Pilipinas Shell Corporation has teamed up with Sun Mobility to investigate the feasibility of deploying advanced battery swapping technologies for 2- and 3-wheelers. And then just recently, the Ayala Corporation, 917 Ventures, and Gogoro entered into a similar arrangement. These partnerships are, along with the EVIDA, promotes our goal of having a sustainable electric transportation for the Philippines. Local EV manufacturing and assembly are limited to electric jeepneys and electric tricycle. Jeepney manufacturing has been ongoing locally for more than a decade. There are currently 7 local companies engaged in the production of CKD assembly e-tricycles. The Philippines has 256 companies that cater to the domestic automotive market. These companies produce over 330 parts and components that cater to the OEM and aftermarket, having 40% and 60% of the producers respectively. The Philippines also has 8 battery manufacturers, which is limited to lead-acid battery production and battery pack assembly for lithium-ion-based batteries. The Philippines is a net importer of automotive vehicles. Preliminary figures from 2022 indicate that 74% of our vehicle imports come from ASEAN countries. 54% of that is Indonesia, 20% Thailand, followed by China with 12%, Japan with 6%, South Korea with 3%, the remaining 5% are from the rest of the world. As seen in the earlier slides, EV sales, while increasing, remain significantly smaller compared to our ICE vehicles. To accelerate the adoption of EVs, the Philippines has set a 0% import tariff for battery electric vehicles last January 2023 for a period of 5 years. This is expected to make EV costs more attractive to Filipino consumers. The CREVI vision is to electrify a diverse range of vehicles and the establishment of a domestic EV industry built on sustainable future where new EV and its required infrastructures are locally available and exported with reduced environmental impact. Industry goals include increased domestic EV utilization, deployment of sufficient EV charging stations, for the positioning of the Philippines as a producer and exporter of electric vehicles, promotion and growth for a just e-mobility transition, and support for research and development to strengthen industry competitiveness. To execute these targets, these are the required actions from the responsible stakeholders for the indicated periods. We will follow a phased approach on EV utilization with demonstration, refleeting, and promotion. The government will lead by example with the deployment of EV and EV charging stations. For manufacturing, improvements in manufacturing capability and pilot programs for local manufacturing sector. For research and development, battery storage, battery manufacturing, and EV manufacturing are our focus. For the human resource development, focus is on capacity building and the promotion of entrepreneurship. Capacity building, technical support, and international partnerships are also being pursued. Cross-cutting includes the integration of EV charging stations with clean energy sources, standardization of EV charging stations and electric vehicle, as well as the implementation of other related issuances. Under Executive Order Number 12, as I previously mentioned, it covers battery electric vehicles except hybrid electric vehicles, again for a period of 5 years. This is aimed at incentivizing our consumers to purchase. I'm now flashing on the screen the big picture numbers under 2 scenarios. One is our business as usual, or BAU, our base case, wherein these are the 2023 and 2028 targets, 311,700 EVs with 7,400 EV charging stations. Our more aggressive clean energy scenario that sees our total EV fleet share at least 50% by 2040, at 2,454,200 EVs and 65,000 EV charging stations. Medium-term targets, again, business as usual is on the top, 580,500 electric vehicles with 14,000 EV charging stations. For our clean energy scenario, or CES, 1,851,500 EVs and 42,000 EV charging stations. And the long-term target, or by 2040, business as usual of 850,100 EVs and 20,300 EV CS, and clean energy scenario of 2,001,600 EVs and 65,000 EV charging stations. Under the forthcoming EV incentive strategy, the country is looking to leverage on its mineral resources for the production of batteries, specifically lithium batteries. We should note that these batteries require non-ferrous metals, including lithium, cobalt, nickel, manganese, graphite, copper, aluminum, which some of these metals and minerals are found in the Philippines domestically. In 2020, the value of mineral production in our country reached 180 billion pesos. Figure shows the breakdown of our 2021 annual value of production from the Philippine metallic mineral sector. The Philippines' local nickel reserves mostly come from laterite form. Thus, potential for manufacturing and mining of minerals for battery production may be engaged, and actually our colleagues later on may touch on this. So that ends my presentation. Again, thank you for your kind attention. For more information, you can scan the QR codes for our EVIDA, the law itself, the implementing rules and regulation, and our roadmap as flashed on the screen. Again, thank you at maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Director Aquino, for your presentation. Next, let us welcome Ms. Maria Corazon Halili Dichosa, Executive Director from the Board of Investments, Philippines.
Thank you. Philippine Ambassador Maria Teresa de Vega, ASEAN Korean Center Secretary General Kim Hae-yong, fellow speakers, guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Philippines is considered as one of the most vulnerable countries in the world due to its archipelagic makeup and location. Typhoons now are stronger and becoming year-round in the Philippines. A lot of people attribute it to climate change resulting from human activities, including transport. If no mitigating measures are implemented, it is likely to result in continuing and more severe climate changes in the country. So we in the BOI and DTI see electric vehicles as a key technology in the automotive industry to contribute to sustainable development with lower greenhouse gas emissions, less air pollution for citizens, and new job opportunities with positive social impact. Aside from environmental benefits, we also see the corresponding health benefits of electric vehicles, thus our journey towards automotive electrification. For this journey, we do need a lot of partnerships. The Philippine government has provided these support programs to encourage investors and partners to join us in this EV journey in the country. These include the Motor Vehicle Development Program, or MVDP, which allows registered participants to import their completely knocked down kits at 0% preferential tariff so they can do assembly in the Philippines at lower cost. Second is the TRAIN Act, which provides for the exemption of EVs from excise tax and a 50% reduction of applicable excise tax for hybrid vehicles. The third is the one that was described by my colleague from the Department of Energy, the EV Industry Development Act, or EVIDA, which provides for the policy framework for local EV development covering fiscal incentives under the CREATE Act and non-fiscal incentives to facilitate the adoption of EVs in the country. EVIDA also provides for the crafting of the comprehensive roadmap on EV industry, as was discussed earlier as well. The fourth is the CREATE Act, which provides for the fiscal incentives like income tax holiday, additional deduction for some of the qualified expenses after the tax holiday, and duty exemptions on capital equipment and raw materials for your operations. And then the fifth one is the recently issued Executive Order number 12, which reduced the MFN duties to 0% for EVs completely built units for a period of 5 years. And then equally important, as we have these policy reforms, is the continuous build-up of an industrial ecosystem that will support the industry growth in the country. Very important is making sure that there are skilled people who can provide labor to the manufacturing and services enterprise in the Philippines. Our total population right now is around 113 million people, which is good for a market as well as skilled labor. This is forecasted to be around 125 million by 2030, and you will note that around 63% of the total population of the Philippines is working age. And based on the latest data, the Philippines has the youngest population with a median age of almost 26 years old. We graduate around 750,000 students, and of this, 86,000 are in the engineering and technology courses. The Filipinos are highly trainable with around 6 months learning curve and can easily adapt to work with any nationality or work environment. The government is keen on further intensifying efforts to upskill and reskill our workforce to the newer technologies that is required of the automotive industry. The government also continues to develop its infrastructure to facilitate movement of goods and people to support industrial growth. Early this year, the government approved 123 projects comprised mostly of improving physical connectivity, which would allow for more highways and roads for EVs to run on, including long-distance railways and upgrade of the Manila International Airport. The list also includes water infrastructure, projects in digital connectivity, health, power and energy, agriculture, and others. Likewise, economic zones and information technology parks to support EV support services are also made available to help investors start up operations faster. The Philippines, as mentioned, has vast resources of green metals such as nickel and cobalt, which are key inputs for battery manufacturing. Currently, the Philippines has 2 HPAL plants, which are operated by Japanese companies, and are doing battery materials that are currently supplied to Japan for battery manufacturing. Additionally, the country is also rich in copper, which is likewise an important input for technology products. We would like to locally process these minerals, provide battery materials as part of the EV supply chain, in addition to the existing auto parts manufacturing industry in the country. Another critical component, of course, for automotive and the case technologies is electronics. In the Philippines, 73% of electronics firms are engaged in SMS with capabilities in back-end of chip fabrication, including testing, assembly, and packaging. We have a strong wiring harness and auto electronics manufacturing, as well as IC design services. With increased need for electronics in this age of advanced technologies and digitalization, the government is working with the local electronics industry to further strengthen its competencies and competitiveness to likewise support the growth of the local EV industry. Another critical industry is the IT BPM or BPO, especially in the engineering design and software development, where the Philippines have competencies as well. While engineering design is still an emerging industry, software development already has around 400 companies in the Philippines employing around 200,000 IT professionals. With a 7% growth rate, we expect the software development to play a greater role in the growth of the EV industry, or not just in the EV industry, but the other technologies that are related to mobility, for example, fintech. On a last note, the Philippine government will continue to work with industry stakeholders represented here by Mr. Ed Bondaraga of EVAP and Director Patrick Aquino from our Department of Energy to further strengthen the country's competitive industrial ecosystem to support EV industry development. And technology leaders like Korea can be assured of the strong intellectual property protection regime in the country. Note that the Philippines has not been in the USTR blacklist for at least the last 5 years. So thank you for your attention, and be part of the future of mobility and make it happen in the Philippines.
Thank you, Ms. Maria Corazon Halilidi Chosa, for your excellent presentation. Our last speaker for this session will be Mr. Dao Trong Tien, Commercial Attaché of the Embassy of Vietnam.
예, 여러분 안녕하십니까? 주한 베트남.
Good afternoon. As introduced, my name is Dao from the embassy in Vietnam.
The AKC and the IEV for inviting me to speak today, and I'm honored to share with you information about Vietnam electric vehicle development policy, as well as potential advantages and investment opportunity in electric vehicle industry in Vietnam. Yeah. My presentation is divided into 4 parts. The first part will provide general information in Vietnam, while the second part will focus the potential electric vehicle development in Vietnam. The third part will discuss policy support the development of Vietnam electric vehicle industry, and the fourth part will outline the advantages in investing in Vietnam for Korean company. Yeah. As you know, Vietnam population estimates to be 100 million in 2023, ranking the third Southeast Asia and the fifth in the world, in which the number of the people under the 15 years old accounts 25%, and number of the people is working is accounts 70%. The average working age in Vietnam is 33 to 37. Vietnam has one of the fastest growing economy in the world, with a GDP of the 409 billion USD in 2023. With the advantage of the young population, fast economic development, and good ability to attract FDI, Vietnam has many advantages to developing high technology industry, includes electric vehicle and electronics. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, the development of production of the electric vehicle battery play a vital role in the development of the electric vehicle in Vietnam. Vietnam has abundant key input material for electric vehicle battery production, including lithium, nickel, mangan, cobalt, and graphites, all conveniently available for the on-site mining, reduce the production cost, and directly serving the electric vehicle battery industry. When the electric vehicle industry development, the electric infrastructure to supply electric vehicle market will also expand significantly. Vietnam government is considering approach its power plant in the second quarter of 2023 to create favorable conditions for electric vehicle industry to development. This will provide sufficient infrastructure to electric vehicle development and meet COP26 standard on shifting fossil energy source to renewable, low carbon emission energy source. Vietnam is most potential electric car development market in the South Asia and expect to have the 1 million electric car around 2028, growing rapidly in the periods 2030 and 2040. Yeah. So during 26th conference of the party to the United Nations Framework Convention in the climate change in Glasgow, UK in November, Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính announced Vietnam's commitment to achieve net zero emission by 2050. This reflects the country's strong determination of focus on developing its industry, including the electric vehicle industry, and to pave the way for the inevitable development of Vietnam automobile industry. Vietnam has changed policy